0045, 045 3, 30 530, 530 8, 8 Fonile 1015, 1015, 1130. End screen, links to other videos on kangaroos or cassowaries. 1130 1345, The Internal Blender, A Diet of Stone voiceover. If you've ever spent time watching an emu in the wild, you'll notice they aren't particularly picky eaters. They'll have a go at just about anything: seeds, fruits, insects, and even the occasional bit of green shoot. But here's the kicker: emus don't have teeth. To compensate for this, they employ a method of digestion that's straight out of the Jurassic period. They swallow stones, known as gastroliths. These stones, some as large as a golf ball, sit in the bird's gizzard. As the gizzard's powerful muscles contract, the stones act like a mechanical blender, grinding up tough fibrous plant material and hard seeds that would otherwise be impossible to digest. In a single emu, you might find nearly a kilogram of rock. It's a heavy-duty system that allows them to extract every possible kilojoule of energy from the sparse vegetation of the outback voiceover. This waste not want not approach extends to their water consumption too. While they prefer to drink daily, an emu can go for days without a sip if the conditions are right. They possess a highly efficient cooling system in their nasal passages. As they breathe, the complex structure of their nasal folds allows them to reclaim moisture from their own breath before it's exhaled. It's a brilliant piece of biological recycling that keeps them moving when the water holes dry up. 1645-1615, The Rain Chasers, Navigating a Continent voiceover. One of the most enduring mysteries of the emu is their uncanny ability to find rain in a desert the size of Western Europe. Farmers have long noted that mobs of emus seem to appear out of nowhere, just as the first clouds break over a parched paddock. For a long time, we thought it was just luck. But research suggests it's far more sophisticated. We mentioned those infrasonic booms they make earlier. Well, it turns out emus are also incredibly sensitive to low-frequency sounds created by distant thunderstorms, frequencies that are far below the range of human hearing. Voiceover. They can literally hear a storm hundreds of kilometers away. Once they lock onto that frequency, they begin a forced march, sometimes covering over 500 kilometers in a matter of weeks to reach the fresh growth that follows a downpour. They aren't just wandering, they're navigating the continent using a biological GPS that responds to the very heartbeat of the weather. 1830, Social Media versus Reality, the pet emu myth voiceover. Now, if you've been scrolling through TikTok or Instagram lately, you've probably seen pet emus living in suburban backyards or even in houses. They look like charming, giant muppets, don't they? But as a wildlife writer, I've got to give you the fair dinkum truth. Emus make terrible pets in a domestic setting. That natural curiosity we've discussed turns into destructive power. An emu doesn't understand the concept of fragile. They explore the world with their beaks and their feet. A curious nudge from an emu can shatter a window, and those powerful legs can easily kick through a standard fence if they feel cornered. Voiceover. More importantly, they are social, wide-ranging animals. Confining a bird built for 1,000-kilometer treks to a quarter-acre block is a recipe for a stressed, aggressive animal. When they hit sexual maturity, those cute chicks can become highly territorial and unpredictable. Respecting them means keeping them wild. The best way to own an emu is to own a pair of binoculars and see them in their natural habitat, where they belong. 1830-20, The Legacy of the Ratite voiceover. To wrap this up, we have to look at where the emu sits in the grand story of life on Earth. They belong to a group called ratites, which includes the ostrich, the rhea, and their much grumpier northern cousin, the cassowary. These birds took a different evolutionary path when the dinosaurs vanished, choosing size and speed over flight. The emu is a survivor of a lineage that has remained largely unchanged for millions of years. They aren't primitive in the sense of being simple, they are refined. They are the ultimate solution to the question, how do you thrive on a continent that is constantly trying to dry you out? Voiceover. So, the next time you see that silhouette on the horizon or hear that deep thumping in the scrub, remember, you're looking at a bird that didn't just win a war against the Lewis's gun. It won the war of evolution. It's a true Australian icon, a masterpiece of the bush, and a giant that reminds us that sometimes the best way to move forward is to just keep on running. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Don't forget to hit that like button if you learn something new about our feathered locals. Cheers for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. 2022-30. The Great Divider, Emus and the Fence voiceover. We can't talk about the emu's place in modern Australia without talking about the Big Fence. Australia is home to some of the longest man-made structures on Earth, specifically the State Barrier Fence in Western Australia and the Dingo Fence stretching across the east. While these were originally built to keep out rabbits or dingoes, they've become a massive obstacle and a gathering point for the emu during dry years when the interior becomes a dust bowl. Tens of thousands of emus migrate toward the more fertile coastal southwest. They hit these fences and stop. For a filmmaker, it's a staggering sight. A literal river of feathers stretching as far as the eye can see along a wire mesh. It's a point of high tension. It's where human agricultural needs clash directly with ancient migratory paths. Voiceover. This is often where the conflict narrative restarts. But modern farmers and conservationists are finding better ways to coexist. We're learning that emus actually help keep these fence lines healthy by eating invasive weeds. Instead of the Lewis guns of the 1930s, today we use data and movement tracking to understand how to manage these emu surges without disrupting the delicate balance of the rangelands. 2230-25 Cough. Written in the stars, the emu in the sky voiceover. To truly appreciate the emu, you have to look beyond the biology and into the deep cultural history of this continent. For tens of thousands of years, Australia's First Nations people have observed the emu with a level of scientific precision that matches any modern ethologist. If you look up at the Milky Way on a clear night in the Outback, you might see what many cultures around the world see, a collection of bright stars. But many Indigenous Australian groups, such as the Gamilaroi and Wardaman people, look at the dark spaces between the stars. Voiceover. This is Gugamin, the emu in the sky. It's a dark constellation formed by the dust clouds of the Milky Way. What's incredible is that this celestial emu acts as a seasonal calendar. When the sky emu is in a certain position, it signals that the terrestrial emus are beginning to lay their eggs. When its position shifts later in the year, it indicates the eggs have hatched and the chicks are roaming. It's a masterclass in ecological timing, proving that the emu has been central to the human experience in Australia since the very beginning. 25-27-45. The Conservation Paradox voiceover. Now, if you look at a conservation map, you'll see the emu listed as least concern on a global scale. There are roughly 600,000 to 700,000 of them across the continent. But that broad statistic hides a worrying reality. In certain pockets, particularly the New South Wales North Coast, the emu is actually an endangered population. Habitat fragmentation, splitting up their land with roads and housing, is their biggest threat. An emu needs space. They need the freedom to follow the rain, and when we cut those paths off, local populations can collapse. We're also seeing a rise in vehicle strikes. An emu on the road at dusk is a danger to itself and to drivers, further complicating the relationship between modern infrastructure and ancient instincts. Voiceover. Conservation today isn't just about saving a species that is already numerous. It's about preserving the integrity of their movement. It's about ensuring that the rivers of feathers can still flow when the drought hits. We're seeing more wildlife corridors being planned, emu-friendly fencing that allows chicks to pass through while keeping livestock 27:45:30 closing, the spirit of the scrub voiceover. So, what have we learned about Australia's second largest bird? They are the dads of the year, the engineers of the bush, the winners of a war they didn't even know they were fighting, and a vital part of the world's oldest living culture. They are a reminder that the Australian bush isn't just a place of harsh extremes, it's a place of incredible, resilient life. The emu doesn't ask for much, just a bit of space, a few good stones for the gizzard, and the freedom to follow the sound of a distant storm. Voiceover. In a world that's constantly changing, there's something deeply comforting about the emu. They've been trotting across this red dirt for millions of years, and if we give them the respect they deserve, they'll be thumping through the scrub for millions more. If you've enjoyed this journey into the heart of the Outback, do us a massive favour, hit that like button, leave a comment about your own emu encounters, and subscribe for more deep dives into the wildlife that makes this planet so spectacular. I'm your channel name, and I'll see you out in the bush. Cheers. 30-32-30, the ostrich rivalry. A lesson in top and Paris voiceover. Now, we can't talk about the emu without addressing its larger, more famous cousin, the African ostrich. People often look at the two and see the same bird in a different postcode. But from an evolutionary perspective, they've taken very different paths, while the ostrich is the undisputed heavyweight champion. Standing taller and reaching higher top speeds, the emu is the undisputed champion of endurance and versatility. An ostrich is a sprinter, an emu is an ultramarathon runner. But the most striking difference is in their feet. The ostrich has only 2 toes, one of which is a massive hoof-like nail designed for pure propulsion. The emu, however, retains 3 toes. This gives them significantly better traction and stability on the uneven, rocky terrain of the Australian interior. Voiceover. And then there's the temperament. Ostriches are notoriously high-strung. Emus, by comparison, are driven by an intense, almost cat-like curiosity. If you leave a shiny tool or a colourful hat out in the bush, an emu won't just look at it. It will investigate, peck at it, and potentially try to walk off with it. This isn't aggression, it's a high-level cognitive processing of their environment. 32-35. The thermal engine. Surviving the 50-degree mark voiceover. Let's look at the mechanism of survival when the mercury hits 50 degrees Celsius in the shade. How does a bird covered in thick feathers not simply cook? It comes down to a process called evaporative cooling, but with a clever avian twist. When it gets properly hot, an emu will begin to pant. But unlike a dog, they have a highly vascularized lining in their throat and mouth. As they move air over these moist membranes, it cools the blood, circulating beneath them. This chilled blood then travels to the brain, acting like a built-in air conditioning unit. Voiceover, furthermore, they use their feathers as a thermal shield. While the outer tips of the feathers can reach temperatures that would burn human skin, the base of the feather, near the skin, stays remarkably cool. By fluffing their feathers, they create a convection current, allowing heat to rise and escape without ever penetrating their core. It's a passive cooling system that requires almost zero energy, allowing them to remain active when every other creature in the scrub is forced into hiding. 35-37-30. The Emerald Vault. The science of the egg voiceover. We touched on the dad's dedication earlier, but the egg itself is a masterpiece of biological materials science. Why is it that dark, forest green? In the mottled light and shade of the Australian scrub, that deep green, provided by pigments called biliverdin and protoporphyrin, is the perfect camouflage. From the perspective of a hungry lizard or a bird of prey looking down, those eggs look exactly like a pile of fallen leaves or fruit. Voiceover. But it's not just about colour. The shell is incredibly thick and layered. It has to be. Remember, a male emu weighs around 40 kilograms. If he's going to sit on those eggs for 8 weeks straight, the shell needs the structural integrity of an archway. The microscopic pores in the shell are also calibrated to the Australian climate. They allow the chick inside to breathe while preventing too much precious moisture from evaporating in the dry air. It is quite literally a high-tech life support pod. 3740 myth correction. The stupid bird fallacy voiceover. Finally, we need to correct the myth that emus are low-intelligence animals. This myth usually stems from their small brain-to-body ratio. But in nature, intelligence isn't about doing calculus. It's about solving the problems your environment throws at you. Voiceover. Emus have shown a remarkable ability for social learning. They watch each other to find food sources and can recognize individual humans and animals over long periods. They don't have the complex social hierarchies of primates because they don't need them. Their intelligence is spatial and sensory. They can map vast landscapes in their minds, remembering where a specific waterhole was located 3 years ago. Voiceover. To call them dumb because they ran into a fence in 1932 is a misunderstanding of their hardware. They are programmed for a world without fences, a world of wide-open horizons. When we see them today, we aren't looking at a primitive relic. We're looking at a highly specialized, successful organism that has mastered one of the most difficult landscapes on the planet. Voiceover. Australia wouldn't be Australia without the emu. They are the heartbeat of the outback, the guardians of the seed, and the flightless giants that continue to fascinate us. Thanks for sticking with us through this 4-part journey. Respect the birds, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one. 40-42-30, sharing the scrub, practical safety voiceover. Now, because emus are such a staple of the Australian landscape, there's a good chance you'll cross paths with one if you're heading Outback of Bourke, or even just visiting a coastal national park. While they aren't naturally aggressive, they are large, powerful animals that deserve a healthy amount of personal space. The most important thing to remember is the emu's primary weapon, the forward kick. Unlike a horse that kicks backward, an emu strikes out and down with its powerful 3-toed feet. Those inner toes are equipped with a heavy nail-like claw that can be up to 10 centimeters long. In the wild, this is used to ward off dingoes or rival males, but if a human corners a bird or makes it feel threatened, that instinct can kick in. Voiceover. If you find yourself too close for comfort, the best advice is simple. Don't run. Running can trigger a chase instinct or cause the bird to panic and bolt. And remember, they're faster than you. Stand your ground, keep your bag or a jacket in front of you as a shield, and move away slowly and sideways. By not turning your back and not acting like prey, you're signaling to the bird that you're not a threat. 42-30-45. The fed bird is a dead bird. Rule voiceover. This brings us to an essential piece of wildlife ethics: the temptation to feed them. Because emus are so inquisitive, they'll often approach campsites or picnic areas looking for a handout. It might seem like a bit of harmless fun to toss them a piece of bread or a snag, but you're actually doing the bird a massive disservice. Voiceover. Human food is devastating for emu digestion. It can lead to nutritional deficiencies and a condition called angel wing, where the wings develop unnaturally and stick out at odd angles. But even more dangerous is the habituation. An emu that learns to associate humans with food becomes a nuisance bird. They stop foraging naturally and start harassing tourists, often becoming aggressive when the food stops. Sadly, in many parks, a bird that becomes too bold for public safety is often the one that has to be relocated or culled. To truly respect the emu, keep your lunch to yourself and let them find their own bush tucker. 45-47-30 Wisdom. The emu dash voiceover. If you're driving through emu country, especially at dawn or dusk, you need to be on high alert. Emus are notorious for the last-minute dash. You'll see them standing perfectly still by the side of the road, and just as you approach, they'll decide that now is the perfect time to cross. This isn't because they're silly. It's because their depth perception is geared toward detecting movement in the scrub, not calculating the closing speed of a 2-ton land cruiser. If you see one emu cross, chances are there are 3 more right behind it. Slow down, give them a wide berth, and if you have to stop, do so safely. Avoiding a collision isn't just about saving the bird, it's about your own safety, as a 60-kilogram bird through a windscreen is a recipe for disaster. 473050. An ethical close, the long walk forward voiceover. Looking back at the Great Emu War of 1932, it's easy to laugh at the absurdity of it all. But it also marks a significant turning point in our relationship with the Australian environment. We went from trying to conquer the land and its pests to slowly realizing that we are part of a complex, shared ecosystem. The emu has been walking this continent for millions of years. They were here long before the first fences were wire-strained, and they've survived every challenge we've thrown at them. They are a symbol of endurance, a masterpiece of evolution, and a living link to Australia's prehistoric past. Voiceover. Our job now is to be the stewards of their future. Whether it's through better road awareness, protecting the emu in the sky heritage, or simply giving them the space they need to follow the rain, we owe it to these flightless giants to let them keep running. Voiceover. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life of the emu. It's been a privilege to share their story with you. If you've enjoyed this documentary-style look at our unique wildlife, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing and sharing this video. Every bit helps us keep telling the stories of the animals that make Australia like nowhere else on Earth. Voiceover. Stay safe, keep your eyes on the horizon, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers!